Hello and welcome to the Fin to the Woods podcast with me, Finian Hackett. Time for another episode of going through all the latest theatre news and gossip and this, that and the other. And this week I've been to see two shows, so we've got two shows to cover and review and to talk about as well. It's very miserable here in the UK right now. As I'm recording, it's pissing it down with rain. So if you can hear the pitter-patter of rain, that's what it is. It's rain, funnily enough. So let's get started because I've got a lot I want to talk about. Let's start with talking about my first theatre trip of the week. So I went to see the UK tour of Dear Evan Hansen at the Theatre Royal in Brighton. So this new non-replica production of the show first opened in Nottingham at the Nottingham Playhouse. It played a month there and it's done a couple of other tour dates since then, but currently it's in Brighton ahead of a tour that's going on till the middle of next year. It's quite a lengthy tour up and down the country. So Dear Evan Hansen is a show that I have seen before. I went to see it in the West End back in early 2020. I think it was January of 2020. I saw And Juliet in the afternoon and this in the evening. And I have to say, and I have to admit, it was not my favourite show in the world. I found it very miserable. I didn't particularly enjoy a lot of the songs. Some of them are nice, but when they're all together, it's all quite heavy going. And I also did not like the plot. I found it really hard to empathise with the lead character of Evan Hansen and all his actions that he does throughout the show. Also, it discusses a very sensitive topic of suicide, and at times I felt it wasn't necessarily handled the most sensitively, and maybe that's just me, but that's how I felt. So after seeing it in the West End, I have to be honest, I had no true desire of seeing the show again and seeing the UK tour. However, my friend Sunny, who I went to college with, so back in I can't remember the year, but we went to college together and did musical theatre for a couple of years. And there was a big TikTok campaign. You may remember this from a few months ago, well, earlier on this year. There was a TikTok campaign to find a cast member for Evan Hansen. They put out this thing saying, send your videos in with this hashtag. We'll look through and some of you might get to audition. Sunny sent in a video and ultimately he ended up getting the part of alternate Evan Hansen and also being in the ensemble of the show. So basically he does all the matinees throughout the week, and whilst it was in Brighton there were 3 matinees, which is quite a lot, but I really wanted to go and see him and support him, and just it was a bit surreal, I have to admit, seeing him on stage playing that part, because over the course of our years at college he sung the songs for assessments, he sung the duets for assessments, so I've heard him sing the songs quite a few times, but to actually see him play the part was so surreal. But that was the main reason for my visit, and I have to say it was worth it just to see him because he was brilliant, and I was so glad that I got to see him play the part. It was really lovely. I also loved Alice Fern, who played Evan Hansen's mum in the show. I thought she was fantastic. She was really warm, and her singing voice is phenomenal. But her and Sunny together was just there were some really nice tender moments between them. I like the fact that this production isn't a replica production, because often when a show has finished in the West End, like Dear Evan Hansen did a few years ago, they will then tour that production around the UK, and that's kind of the standard. So I'm not quite sure why that production of Dear Evan Hansen didn't end up touring, maybe because the set was too complicated, it was a lot on kind of big trucks and things like that. So maybe that's why, I'm not too sure. However, this new production from Nottingham Playhouse is great, and I really enjoyed the set for this. I thought there was really good use of video and also smaller set pieces like kitchen set pieces and beds and this, that and the other. It didn't feel too clunky. The only thing that I felt needed still to be smoothed out was the sliding barriers. They had these kind of sliding wall panels that were frosted but kind of looked like someone had put dirty hands all over it and hadn't cleaned it. They didn't look frosted enough, I don't think. And clearly they're on some sort of pulley system, because obviously they can't be properly kind of fitted into the venue because it's kind of week in, week out. And there were times when it was clearly pulled too fast and then they whacked and bounced off each other and made a really loud bang. It happened a couple of times, and that does kind of take you out of it, because when you have those big slider things, you want it to look like they're automated, and I have to say it didn't. a lot of the time. And that was the only thing that really stood out for me from the set issue, was that. But hopefully, as the tour goes on, it will all smooth itself out. But I did like the new look. I liked the fact that there were new costumes, and he wasn't just in kind of the stripy shirt that he's known for. Evan Hansen, he wore a red top and this and that. And I quite like that they didn't kind of stick too much to the original, but didn't steer too far away, if you understand what I mean. But it's still a show that I don't particularly enjoy watching, and I don't think that's ever going to change, no matter who I know in it or whether the production is different or not. I just struggle with the plot. I find it uncomfortable to watch, but not in a, oh, this is good because it's making me uncomfortable. It's more in a, this is uncomfortable because I think it's just a badly written plotline. If you don't know the plot, Evan Hansen is a bit of a loner at school, and there's another guy called Connor Murphy who's a bit of a bully, a bit of an outcast, and him and Evan aren't really friends. They don't really talk, this, that and the other. Evan Hansen has started to write letters to himself called Dear Evan Hansen, because his therapist has told him to do so. One day he's printing it off in the library or in the computer room or whatever, and Connor Murphy finds the letter, steals it because it says on it things about Connor Murphy's sister, because Evan Hansen fancies her, and Connor Murphy finds it and takes it away and goes, I'm going to go and show my sister. And then Connor Murphy commits suicide, and then Connor Murphy's parents find the letter with him, and they think that he was writing the letters to Evan Hansen, and Evan Hansen goes on with the lie and pretends that him and Connor Murphy were best friends, and it just continues from that point onwards to spiral out of control. He keeps on lying and lying and lying and lying, and lots of people around me get very emotional during this and were crying throughout the whole show at all the songs, but I struggle because every time Evan Hansen sings about anything, he's lying. He's lying to the family, he's lying to the sister who he ends up sleeping with, and it just kind of irks me, and it makes me feel like these songs are nice, but in the context of the show, they feel really, make me feel a bit weird, and I don't really understand how anyone can empathise towards him, because yes, Evan Hansen does have his own issues and own mental health problems, but should that excuse what he did to that family? I don't think so. Personally, I think it's really horrible what he did, and he just continued to lie, and eventually, spoiler alert, he ends up telling the parents that he was lying, and the sister that he was lying, and then they run off. He sings a song, then he goes and sings a song with his mum, and then we skip forward a year right at the end, or like about 8 months or something, and he's in this orchard, which they built in memoriam to Connor Murphy, and the sister's there, and they end up just having a chitter-chatter, like nothing's happened, like he didn't just lie to them for months on end about the fact that he knew her brother and that he was best friends with her, and he kind of lied to them for months, and it's all like it didn't happen. It's very weird, and I just think it's really badly paced as a plot, and I just don't think, in my mind, it's a particularly good one. I don't think it's just me who feels like this, because I posted a TikTok about the show and lots of people had similar opinions, and some people didn't. Some people said that they think there's a deeper meaning to it, and I personally don't necessarily see what the meaning is. Is it Don't Lie? The Boy Who Cried Wolf? That's what I think it comes across as, because he's just consistently lying to all his friends and family, including his mum. It's all just bizarre, and I just don't like the plot, basically, as you can probably tell, but there are elements of the show. Some of the songs are lovely and sung really well in this production, and some of the songs are slightly dreary and more forgettable than others. So I just think it's just had this huge fan base, but I do think it is just an odd show. Fans of the musical will really enjoy this tour, and I think they'll enjoy it just as much as the West End production. It was a really good quality, high quality UK tour, and I genuinely think it will sell well and it will do really well. It was busy on the matinee that I went to, and if you like Dear Evan Hansen and you want to see the show for the first time, it's perfect. It's a good production of the show. I'm not saying it isn't, but I just personally don't enjoy the show very much. I have to say though, the queuing system at the Theatre Royal in Brighton is a nightmare. We had to queue all the way down the road from the theatre for about 10 minutes, and you all have to shuffle in just this one door, like literally single file into the foyer. I mean, I don't think it's particularly well built foyer because you can't really go anywhere. It's so cramped and tiny, and it was just bizarre that they had the queue for the merch, which was like t-shirts and stuff, on the left-hand side of the door where you're also getting your bag checked. So then you ended up getting stuck in the merchandise queue behind a barrier as you came in. But I didn't want merch, I wanted a programme. But they didn't tell you that programmes were also available at all the bars. It was a bit of a shambles, I have to say. But hopefully it's not like that all the time. But it just felt really chaotic and I didn't really understand what I was meant to be doing in the queue. But Dear Evan Hansen is touring the country up until the middle of next year. So do go and see it if you can, if you want to catch Dear Evan Hansen for the first time or for the 50th time. The other show that I've had the pleasure of watching this week is Sondheim on Sondheim, and this was at the Alexandra Palace Theatre, and it's only for 2 nights, Sunday and Monday this past week, and I went on the Sunday, and I absolutely loved it. So this show premiered on Broadway in 2010, and it had the likes of Vanessa Williams, Barbara Cook, who got herself a Tony nomination for it. You also had Tom Wopat, you had Leslie Kritzer, Norm Lewis, a really strong cast. And it basically tells the story of Stephen Sondheim's life, narrated by him via video clips that he filmed for the show and also past interviews from across his career. So it's those clips kind of spliced in between musical numbers and segments about his shows and stories about his shows, and it makes for a really interesting viewing. I saw someone describe it as kind of a TED Talk, a musical theatre TED Talk with Stephen Sondheim, and I think that's a great way to describe it because it's a fantastic concept and a really interesting concept to watch. And yes, there are a lot of reviews of Sondheim's work side by Sondheim putting it together. Marry Me a Little, the recent Sondheim Old Friends. There's quite a lot of different versions of shows that celebrate him and his music, but this one is the only one really that features him throughout, and he's kind of one of the main characters, if you will. The show's performed by an octet, so it was Jenna Russell, Clive Rowe, Scarlett Strallen, Josephina Gabrielle, Jack Wolfe, Jack Malone, Georgina Anura and Luca Chadwick Patel, and all of them were so strong. And I often have not an issue, but I think when you go and see a smaller scale production with a smaller company, then if someone is bad, or not bad, but weaker than other people, it really shows and you really notice, and you constantly are like, oh no, here they come. But in this, every time they came on to do a number, any of them, I felt safe that they were on stage, if that makes any sense at all. They kind of were very warm performers and very just enjoyable to watch, and you felt comfortable watching them on stage, that they weren't going to fuck up all the time. As a show, it does jump around a bit. It isn't in chronological order, and it does go from show to show, and there's more from some shows than others, and I think sometimes that doesn't hinder it, but I think in a way I'd like to see it in chronological order, just for ease of kind of understanding his writing style and the way his career went, but I like how it was done. There's quite a lot of slow songs in it. That would be my only criticism in regards to the show itself is the fact that the music is quite sad. The majority is quite sad. I know that Sondheim is known for writing sad and kind of, not dreary, that's the wrong word at all, but kind of lower kind of mood music, and a lot of it is that. There's quite a lot from Passion, there's quite a lot from Sunday in the Park with George, and it's not the most uplifting of songs, so I think there are times when it could have done with a bit more interjection of some lighter Sondheim songs. But that being said, there were some beautiful arrangements in the show and really clever medleys. They did a lovely version of Something's Coming from West Side Story, which I really enjoyed as a quartet, and the harmonies were lovely. A beautiful mashup of Losing My Mind and Not a Day Goes By, performed by Scarlett Strallen and Jenna Russell. There was really great performances of things like Franklin Shepherd Inc. from Merrily We Roll Along by Jack Malone, and Josephina Gabrielle did some fantastic numbers, Send in the Clowns, and also But Underneath, which was a song that was written for Diana Rigg for the London production of Follies. And throughout the show also, they feature quite a lot of songs that you might not know. So cut songs from the opening of A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Forum, a cut song from Gypsy called Smile Girls, which was written for Ethel Merman and was only in one performance, one preview, and that was it before it was cut again. You also had some cut songs from Company as well, which were the predecessors to Being Alive. And being able to hear those songs and snippets of them and the reasoning behind why they didn't work is fascinating. And luckily Sondheim is a very witty, entertaining and interesting man to listen to. So when his clips come on, you don't go, oh, hurry up, I want to hear a bit of music now. You want to listen to him because he's such an engaging person, and he was such an engaging individual, that it makes for an entertaining time whether there's music or not. Alexandra Palace as a venue is very unique because obviously it used to belong to the BBC and it's been many things over the years, and it is a bit derelict. They have renovated the inside, but not, I wouldn't say renovated, they've just made it work. They've made the space workable, and I quite like that. There's some weird kind of, not rustic, but kind of just some weird old charm to the building that I quite enjoy, the fact that it isn't pristine inside. And we were set up in the dress circle and we had a great view. The sound was pretty good, you could hear pretty much everything, and in a space that big, that's quite impressive. But I just thought that the theatre was really dark. I couldn't see a thing. In the toilets, the lights were so dim. In the dress circle, the lights were so dim as well. Oh my god, you couldn't see a thing. You couldn't read the programme. Everyone had their torches on. You couldn't see the steps. It was really bizarre. It was almost like they were trying to save electricity. And I don't know why, because I don't understand why it was so dark. It was ridiculous. But also, I think it's not the easiest venue to get to. For me, anyway, I come from the southeast, and it's a good 2.5 hour journey to get there. And it's quite a big commitment to go and see a show, so it's lovely to go and it's lovely to see these one-off concerts, but it's not, I don't think, the most accessible venue for lots of people if you're from the south, but that's a me problem, I guess. But it is a lovely space, and I saw their production of Gypsy there a few years ago when there were multiple roses, and it was really unique and really clever. And I like being able to see theatre like that. I like being able to see new versions of classic shows and Sondheim stuff, and I think it's a really nice place to do it in. So yeah, a fantastic production of this show. I hope it kind of gets more life now. It's very rarely done here in the UK, and I don't really know why. I think maybe because it's quite complex music. They do some quite complex numbers like Opening Doors from Merrily We Roll Along, and some really kind of wordy songs. I mean, a lot of Sondheim is wordy, but to learn that as a group of 8, there's a lot to do. So I can see why it isn't done necessarily loads, but it should be done more often, and I'm surprised it hasn't had more major large-scale productions here in the UK. We love Sondheim, and clearly, judging from the audience reaction, they loved the show as well. So yeah, big congratulations to everyone involved. A brilliant production of Sondheim on Sondheim, and hopefully it was being filmed, so we might see it at some point in the future. Let's crack on and talk about all the latest theatre news, and let's start off by talking about some new productions that are opening. So after a very successful run at the Edinburgh Fringe, Hold On To Your Butts will run at London's Arcola Theatre from the 10th of December to the 4th of January before a big UK tour. And this is, and I didn't know anything about this, and I didn't even see about this during Edinburgh Fringe, it's a live shot-for-shot parody of Jurassic Park. And this is 2 actors and a Foley artist, so someone who does all the sound effects, and that's it. And they do a shot-for-shot parody of Jurassic Park. And it said on like the press thing I read on the multiple news sites that it kind of doesn't go too close to it so they don't get copyright infringement, which I think is quite funny. But it sounds like a hoot, but also really bizarre. And I'm so intrigued. The Les Mis Arena Tour is heading to Australia, so currently it's going around Europe, and it's now going to play Sydney, Melbourne and Brisbane in April and May next year, and then it's moving on to Japan, Taiwan, China, and they've also announced that they have plans for North America and Canada, so it's kind of going all over the shop now. I hope it does a London day. I hope it does a couple of days at the O2 or something, because it's not really coming anywhere close to me, and it's annoying me because I really want to go and see it. But they have also announced some new casting to do with that as well. Matt Lucas is going to be joining as Thénardier in that leg of the tour as well, and Rachel Angot will also join as Fantine, and it looks like Bonnie Langford and a few others will be leaving the tour when it goes over there next year. John Proctor is a Villain, a new play directed by Danya Taymor, who won a Tony for her work on The Outsiders, will open on Broadway on April 14th after starting previews on March the 20th. And this is going to star Stranger Things star Sadie Sink. And this new play is about a high school production of the play The Crucible, a very heavy-going play. I saw my sister do it at school. It was quite a lot, and I was only about 6. I don't know why I went to see it. Anyway, it's about a high school production of The Crucible, and basically the children in it start to question why John Proctor is named as the hero in the play, and it's all interlinked with their high school lives and what they're going through, and it sounds like quite an exciting new addition to the Broadway season next year. It's opening on the 14th of April, as I said, which is right near the end of that Tony kind of eligibility period, so it's squeezing itself in. I said last week that there'll be a few more announcements in the next few weeks of shows trying to squeeze in, and that is the first of a couple that I'm going to talk about in this episode. Gary Oldman is going to return to the stage in Samuel Beckett's Krapp's Last Tape at the York Theatre Royal. So this is where he began his career. He began his career in this theatre, and he's returning to it, which I think is really lovely. And that's from the 14th of April to the 17th of May. And he's not made a stage appearance in 4 decades, which baffles me, because I thought he'd done more on stage, but I guess he's done so much on film, and now recently he's been so successful in Slow Horses that he maybe wants a little bit of a break from the screen work and return to the stage. But I think it's really lovely. It's at the theatre where he started out in a very classic Samuel Beckett play. One of my favourite things I saw this week was to do with this, and it was a post, I think it was by Variety or Deadline, an American news source, who said that Gary Oldman is returning to London's York Theatre Royal. And I can tell you now, whoever it was who posted that York is not in London. Tony nominee Melissa Errico will bring her concert Sondheim in the City to Cadogan Hall on the 12th of July next year with special guest Julian Ovenden. Melissa Errico is said to be one of kind of the best Sondheim interpreters, and she has done many concerts in and around New York and the States celebrating his work, and she's got some albums out with his songs on too, and I would love to go to this, and hopefully I'll be able to, because I really like her voice, and you can't get enough of Sondheim, as you can tell from the amount of times I talk about it, and also go and see it. The musical version of The Lord of the Rings is going to return to the UK, to Plymouth, next October, before embarking on a tour of Europe. This is based on the very successful Watermill production that was in the UK over the last couple of years, and they kind of reinvented the whole show, and it got such good reviews. It's now done runs in Chicago, it's going to Australia, it's going to New Zealand. It's been such a success, and now it's coming back. I didn't go to see it because, to be honest, I've never seen Lord of the Rings, and I don't know a lot about it, and I didn't have much interest in going, but with all this chitter-chatter about it and how wonderful it is, I might have to go. Plymouth is a bit far, so hopefully they announce some more UK tour dates, and I'm sure they will, but currently the only UK date to be announced is in Plymouth. The Show on the Roof, a musical about queer history, is going to open in London next year at the King's Head Theatre, and it's going to run from July the 11th to August the 16th. This is going to be the UK premiere of this new musical, but it premiered in Idaho in 2022 to very good reviews, and that is actually where the show is set as well, and it's going to make its way over here to the UK for a new premiere. The musical Real Women Have Curves has set a Broadway opening date, but no theatre, so it's going to start previews on April 21st with an opening on April 27th. And as I said about the Tony eligibility deadline, which is April 27th, these shows are squeezing it in with hardly any previews. They just want to open and be in this season. So that is kind of currently the last one to open, and it is literally right on the Tony deadline. So, well done to them. Kudos for them for getting in there. And I think probably the most interesting news this week with regards to a show possibly going to Broadway is Dirty Dancing. So you may be thinking, has Dirty Dancing not been on Broadway before? And the answer is no. The show that has been such a success over here in the UK, years and years it's run in the West End over multiple different runs and toured the UK and done well in Europe, has never done well really in the States at all. It did a pre-Broadway tour in 2006 and it toured to various cities, but the tour actually never ended up going to Broadway, and then there was a North American tour 10 years ago in 2014. But now this new production is going to be directed by Tony nominee Lonnie Price, and it's going to have new choreography and new staging concepts and a new look and possibly new songs in it as well. So it's kind of a reimagined, re-thought out production, not the one that is replicated all over Europe and the UK fairly regularly. So Dirty Dancing could finally go to Broadway. That seems to be the plan and what they are wanting to do, but we shall have to see if it actually comes to fruition. And a couple of productions have had extensions announced this week as well. Oliver has extended its West End booking period till next September. The show hasn't even opened yet. It opens in December, but it had such good reviews in Chichester that it's selling well already. Oliver always sells, and I'm not surprised it's extended. That could stay for a good few years in the West End, I think. And also, Hugh Jackman has added more dates to his Radio City Music Hall residency that he's doing. It was initially, I think, only 12 or 14 performances, but now he's added another 12, so it now runs through to October rather than August on select weekends. Let's talk awards, because this week was the UK Theatre Awards, which kind of honour different venues up and down the country, regional theatres, and all the work that they do. So just some of the winners were Kenneth MacLeod for Dracula Mina's Reckoning for Best Design. Best Director went to Drew McOnie for The Artist. Best Musical Production went to Oliver, not the Chichester production, but the Leeds Playhouse production. And Best New Play went to Swim Auntie Swim at the Belgrade Theatre. Best Play Revival went to Rhino at the Lyric Theatre in Belfast. Best Supporting Performer went to Chamisa Dawnford May for Evita. And Best Performance in a Musical went to Jenny Fitzpatrick, also for Oliver. Best Performance in a Play went to David Shields for Punch. And then Excellence in Sustainability went to the Chichester Festival Theatre, and the UK's Most Welcoming Theatre, which I think is the best award to win, went to the Polka Theatre, the Children's Theatre in Wimbledon. Let's talk about some actual theatres themselves now, and we're going to start with the Turbine Theatre. So this is a off-West End venue that has done very well over the last 5 or 6 years, but unfortunately they've announced it's going to close. This is due to apparent lack of investment and philanthropy, according to its artistic director, Paul Taylor-Mills. However, this comes as Equity, the union, are probing serious concerns of workers' rights at the venue. So they've contacted members via email saying that performers and stage management have said to be denied important rights of significant monetary value. This is obviously not very good, and if Equity are publicly talking about this and probing this, there are clearly quite some serious claims that have come to light and that they want to address. And now the theatre has closed quite soon after that was announced, only a few days. Which I'm not saying there's any link to that, but I think it's quite interesting that it's come at a very, very similar time. But it'll be interesting to see what Equity find out and what further information we get about that investigation and see if it goes any further and whether there was any wrongdoings by the management at the Turbine Theatre. And in slightly more positive news, to celebrate their centenary, the Fortune Theatre in the West End on Friday, November the 8th, will have a free event where you can go in the theatre and see all their archives about all the shows that have been on there over its history. And I genuinely think this should be done more often to celebrate theatres, and theatres should have open days on a Sunday or something, once a year or twice a year, where you can go in and just wander around and see backstage and see the auditorium and see kind of the flies and everything. I think it would be really valuable to lots of people, and people would pay money to go and do it. I would go and pay money to go and do it. It doesn't have to be free, and I think it's a brilliant idea, and I hope, fingers crossed, that someone's listening to this at a theatre somewhere and goes, oh, maybe that's a good idea, because I think it would be brilliant. Before we get on to the casting news, I want to talk about a very sad passing this past week of the wonderful Mitzi Gaynor, who passed away at the age of 93. And she was one of the last surviving stars of that proper golden age of Hollywood, and she starred in films such as There's No Business Like Show Business and the 1950s film adaptation of Anything Goes, which is nothing like the show at all. It's very bizarre, but she's very good in it. And most famously, she played Nellie Forbush in South Pacific, and she got herself a Golden Globe nomination for her performance in that film. She also made a fantastic career of doing many television specials as well, which were very well received. There's a brilliant one where she sings We Need a Little Christmas from Mame. She stood there belting her heart out in a little kind of red and white tuft outfit, and behind her is a load of children skating on what looks like fake ice, and they keep on falling arse over tit, and it is absolutely hilarious. So do go and watch that on YouTube. I posted it on my Twitter, and I think I posted it on my TikTok about a year or two ago as well, but it's one of my favourite things ever. I love it. My dad introduced me to that, and it always makes me laugh. But Mitzi Gaynor didn't really have a big stage career. She didn't do a lot on Broadway at all, and she didn't really do a lot of theatre in general, but she toured the US in the Lincoln Center Theatre production of Anything Goes in the late 1980s, with costumes for her by Bob Mackie, which I think is amazing. Imagine having Bob Mackie as your personal designer for a show. I love it. I really, really do. So yes, we've lost a wonderful actress who starred in a very well-known movie musical that people from all generations will have seen. Right, some casting news now. We start off with a kind of interesting casting call that's been put out, and that is the global search for the next Christine in Phantom in London. So, they've literally said you need to submit a video singing a cut version of Think of Me using the tracks and the sheet music available on the website, and you have to submit it by the 13th of December, and successful people will hear back by the end of December. I think this is a great idea, because you might find the next kind of big star who's hiding but will send a little tape along and they'll become horrendously famous by playing Christine. I love it, I really do, and I think it makes it more exciting and a bit like the TikTok casting of Dear Evan Hansen, adds a layer of interest to the casting process, and you might discover, as I said, the next big star. John Robbins has been announced to lead the staged concert of Figaro the Musical, which is making its world premiere at the Palladium next year, and this is going to be alongside Amy Atkinson. That sounds very interesting and unique musical that they're doing. The Joseph Tour has announced its casting, with Christina Bianco as the narrator and Adam Felipe as Joseph. Donny Osmond and Joe McKeldry will play the Pharaoh at certain dates, and Will Haswell will play Simeon, and Hugh Cotton, who I did 3 shows with at GSA, he played Quasimodo when we did The Hunchback of Notre Dame, is playing Reuben, so I'm very happy for him. It also features a 20-strong ensemble plus a whole children's ensemble as well, so it's a big cast, and I think that's going to be a very exciting UK tour. Natasha Pierre and the Great Comet of 1812 at the Donmar Warehouse has announced some of its casting as well. The likes of Declan Bennett and Jamie Moscato and Cedric Neal are part of that new casting. Some brilliant names in there, and I think this is going to be a really good production, and I think this is going to end up going to the West End and be very successful, a bit like Next to Normal. I think it's going to have the same trajectory as that. The Bat Out of Hell UK tour has announced its casting as well. Georgia Bradshaw, Ryan Carter, Carla Bertrand, Luke Street and Carly Burns have joined the tour, which is going to be led by Glenn Adamson, Katie Tonkinson, Rob Fowler and Sharon Sexton. Star of Wicked, Donna Vivino, is going to play the role of Jersey in the musical Hell's Kitchen on Broadway from the 3rd to the 11th of December only, after Shoshana Bean leaves. And she has been the standby for the role for the whole run, but she is doing an official week of performances because there is a little gap before Jessica Vosk plays the part from the 12th of December onwards. So all Wicked alumni, all have been Elphaba, Shoshana Bean, Donna Vivino and Jessica Vosk, which I think is quite hilarious. And finally, my favourite casting announcement of the week is the 2 doggies that are going to play Chowsy in the new Broadway revival of Gypsy. So Tana June is going to be Chowsy, with her standby being Indy, and they are both rescue dogs from Homeward Bound in Indiana, and Tana June has actually been on the stage before, having played Toto in a production of The Wizard of Oz whilst in foster care. And this week's Fin to the Woods vaguely fun fact is linked to Gary Oldman, and I think this is a fact that lots of people actually do know, but I absolutely love it. And it's about his sister. So that sounds really random, but obviously Gary Oldman is an Academy Award winning actor, and his sister, Layla Morse, is best known for playing Big Mo in EastEnders, the very popular UK soap, and it always makes me laugh that those two are siblings, and they have very different career paths than what they've gone on to do, but they are still very friendly by all accounts, so I love the fact that they are siblings, and I think it's a brilliant fact. Thank you once again for listening to the Fin to the Woods podcast. I hope you enjoyed and you learnt a little bit along the way as well. Please do share with your friends and family and on your social media, and give me a rating on Apple Music and Spotify. Help me get some more listeners on here. But I will talk to you once again next week with all the latest theatre news and another review of a new musical that's premiering at the Southwark Playhouse, for which I'm going to press night, which is very exciting, but I will tell you more next week.